you're a newly married man, so how was that?
I mean, it's not really very different. I know you're kind of next up here, but
Yeah, I am.
it's it's nice. I mean, it's just nice to be able to say wife. The wedding was awesome. A lot of friends there, a lot of family come together. Um, not very different than what we were already doing though.
Right. It probably won't change much. I know for me, I feel like I've been married for years, honestly.
Yeah,
Just the way we
same
go
here.
about things and plan stuff. It seems like a really big thing until you gotta have confidence that like you plan all this stuff so well, and then
Mhm.
everybody comes together and starts helping you, and it's not really, as you get closer, I've been actually more comfortable as it's gotten closer. Like I've not been overwhelmed really or nervous, which is most people are kind of thrown off by that when I say that, but
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it hit me really hard right before the ceremony that I was nervous, but then I just acted like it was a wrestling match and took a deep breath and looked around and appreciated the people around me. And I said something to them along the lines of just like, look at the people next to you and like soak in this moment because we're all a little nervous right now. But like, I'm thankful for each and every one of you. And this is going to be an extremely important moment in my life. And I'm thankful that all you guys are here to be a part of it. And I think we all just kind of like took a deep breath and let it out, and then we're just like, yeah, we're all ready. Like I've been getting ready for that moment my whole life, with her for 6 years.
Right.
um there's nothing that was going to happen in that moment that was going to stop the right thing from happening.
And when you're with a good person and it's like been years that you're like,
Oh yeah.
I could get married tomorrow, and it's like
Hmm.
you like prepare a little bit day by day, and then when it comes full circle and you're like, oh, mine's a month away, the end of
Yeah.
August, and I'm just ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel that.
But let's transition into some hunting. Most people kind of know you from your YouTube channel. You filmed with uh, and for the Hunting Beast. So I don't want to, you don't have to do like a full out biography and
Yeah.
listen to enough podcasts. That's kind of gets old too. You've done enough of them. Maybe put your spin on your hunting background, maybe your philosophy and how it's changed maybe over the last couple of years, or how you grew up and hunting and stuff like that.
Yeah, so um I guess I'll start with where I'm at now and kind of where I've been as well. But now, my channel is the Wild Calling. um i I film like really real hunts, but I like to put some effort into producing it. I try to use high quality equipment, try to get a few different angles, try to get some high quality audio. And I try to put together the story as it unfolded for me with the emotions that I was feeling in the moment, and really like bring the viewer along with me. And honestly, for me, it's about doing as much respect to that moment as possible. It's about like how seriously I take hunting and how important it is to me, and being able to convey that with the utmost respect, like the way I display my deer and the way I admire them. I want to put as much respect to them as possible, um, because, well, there's a very specific reason why it's very important to me as well. It's a very defining thing in my life for a reason, but it wasn't always that way. It wasn't always about. I would say it's always been about the journey, and it's always been about like what it means to me. But it kind of took me asking some questions of myself to really discover that was the most important thing to me. And it took me overanalyzing, believe it or not. You know me, I do the hell out of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I overanalyze like crazy, but it took me kind of overanalyzing it and being really introspective and breaking down every component of each of the actions I was doing, like what I was posting, why I was posting it, like where I was going, what I was trying to kill. It took me like really looking at myself in the mirror and say, why are you trying to kill a giant deer? Like, what are the reasons that you're doing that? Like, is this purely because you want to challenge yourself like you've thought it was, or is this some status of ego or symbol? And it was a mixture of a lot of different things. And I think for everyone, there's some ego components to it. And I think, you know, there are two kinds of hunters. This is maybe a little bit too general, but there's the kind of hunters that understand where their ego and will admit their ego plays a role in what they choose to kill.
Yeah.
And there's liars. You know, I think that, and then maybe there's people that don't understand ego. um, but you could be a meat hunter just trying to kill a deer, and maybe your ego is completely detached from that. But part of your ego is your ability to provide for your family. Your ego can act as a
Yep.
good thing too. But it really just took me like analyzing all these different things and asking myself, why was I obsessed with chasing a single deer when there's many deer I'd be really happy with? And for me, I was chasing a single deer because of the implications and the way it could change my life. The way that me and Jake Bush have talked about this a little bit, but just the way that I want like hell and wanted, I guess this is past tense now, to make hunting my job, to be able to influence as many people as possible for the better, to teach them the importance of hunting, to try and maybe save their life in the way it saved mine, and just show them what it means to me, and then by that pass down this tradition that's dying. And I wanted that, and I known for a long time that if I could make this a full-time thing, then I could have a greater outreach, and I could put all of my effort into doing this thing that's my purpose. But I also realized that when you make it your job, it becomes a job, and it removes my ability to tap into this as a resource that is so sacred to me. It makes it readily available. Like, for instance, I got a big buck hunter game in my house. It was a gift from my best man to me. It's less special to play big buck hunter now than it used to be. It's still a ton of fun every
Yeah.
single time, but going to a bar or going to a Cabela's with my dad and putting a buck into a big buck hunter machine and playing with him is a lot more special to me than hopping on the game in my house. And now that I have access to it all the time, it's not the same. I still
Right.
appreciate it. I still enjoy it. It still means a lot to me, but it's not the same. So I kind of lost touch with the way that hunting saved me, and that's a very, very long story. That would be an entire 3 podcasts worth of a story there. But I kind of lost touch with that, and I connected with these things that were distracting me from what mattered most. And so now, like, I'm looking forward to being a little more of an opportunist in hunting, and doing it for the reasons of passing it down to other people, like getting my fiance involved, like her and I were just shooting before this podcast,
Sure.
um, and getting friends involved. I had a friend come over and shoot with us as well, and yeah, that's kind of like what matters to me in hunting is really why you do it. And you can do it for any reason, and good for you. Like, I support any of them, but being sure about why you do it and doing it for a reason that's pure of heart by your own definition, I think is what matters most to me now.
Right. And you kind of touched on that transition from maybe being an opportunist or a a specialist, you could say, where you're going after that one mature deer, and there's totally two different games. I mean, it's not always, and you kind of just explained it, it's not always one way. It's not always going from an opportunist you think of, when you first start hunting, that's how you grow up. You start shooting, you go from shooting a spike to gradually getting bigger, and then it's just all of a sudden you peak out in a sense, where it's not always that direction. You've done that, the last couple of years. I know, just personally talking to you and knowing you, you've been very focused on chasing one deer. And now it sounds like you're kind of getting away from that, or kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So in the past, like all throughout high school, college, as a kid, I shot whatever got me excited, and yeah, I mean, there have been deer that have got me excited last year that I didn't shoot and I didn't kill. And I thought it was like the right decision at the moment. It may have been, extended my season a little bit. I got to learn some more stuff throughout the year. But in reality, I passed on things that got me excited last year as well. Because I was kind of like a gambler, like I was going for that all in scenario. I was like, man, if I killed that 190, 200 inch deer, like how excited would I be then? If I'm getting worked up over like a 140, how excited would I be then? And I just kept doubling down and doubling down and doubling down. And I ended up killing a nice deer during gun, but it wasn't like it. It was nice and fulfilling, and yeah, like the buck streak's still going or whatever, you know. But I found that when I moved away from Western Wisconsin, where there was less pressure, that it kind of changed what it meant to chase a single buck. You know, like out there, I could chase a single deer and very rarely run into a person. And I was almost always moving based on my last sit, things I learned, the data from the deer itself, and the conditions on the day that I got to hunt next. So I was reacting to what I thought the situation was currently, and very little of that was other human interaction. So a lot of it was within my control, and I could step by step by step narrow down and, put that buck in checkmate eventually, and it's funny because I didn't really treat it that way out there. I was still chasing kind of whatever I want. I would do it, little microcosms of that on specific deer, like on that I didn't really understand. I was chasing a specific deer. I would develop these sits back to back to back and slowly learn. And then when I saw that deer was the first time I saw it and I killed it. I would have it on camera sometimes and sometimes I wouldn't. But I was doing that, but I was just, if that deer showed up or another one that was like a 120 or whatever, I was going to kill it, and because it got me worked
Yep.
up, it got me happy. Around here, the times that I've chased specific deer for entire seasons, it has been a lot more people avoiding than deer hunting. It would be nice to hunt deer, but I'm really just avoiding people. And there's just so many people around here. Last year I was still adamant about this one specific buck, and it was truthfully the buck of a lifetime in terms of size. Like it was remarkably big. Jake, you can attest to that. I showed you pictures of him, but
Yeah. And I mean, that's not to interrupt you, but just to hit on that, like I think that does change things. Especially if you're someone who's, hunted for a little bit or even not hunted much at all, you get that buck of a lifetime. It's hard to not just forget everything you should be doing that would take to kill that deer or to help you get there and to just freak out and just forget
right,
everything and, you know,
yeah,
and
and
then
I,
it
I
just
think the
throws a
the
wrench in
things
things.
right. I think the perspective that I miss when I like recount this story and I kind of recount last season is that like the deer in this area don't have a track record for living very long, especially when properties get discovered. Like you may go to a property that uh and these properties are dwindling that people haven't really discovered yet that there's great deer on it, or they haven't just gotten to this section of it, and there will be an older age class of deer, especially in these marshes where there's just areas that you can't sit in a tree and people haven't quite found them yet at times. And then it seems like one after the other, after the other, after the other is getting found out, getting cell cams in it. People are putting cameras on stakes in the middle of marshes to try and figure out these areas without trees or with trees or whatever. Um, and they're getting more and more popular, and these deer are just dying. Usually in deer drives, the deer are just dying. And so when you find this pocket and there's one or two 7, 8, 9 year old bucks in there, and they're giants, like I've never known anyone that on public land has killed a 200-inch deer in Wisconsin personally, you know,
Yep.
and I've never seen anyone kill a deer of the caliber that I was chasing last year, even remotely close, um, even within 40 inches of that. Um, so, I mean, like there's an urgency in that moment, right? You're like, I might never get to chase this deer again. Like for me, it's like I don't consider myself like a super experienced expert hunter or whatever you want to call it. I don't really compare myself to other people and think like I'm an expert compared to them, or like I'm an expert in the field, because I'm not weighing myself against a field, you know?
Yep.
Um, but I want more from myself on hunting. I want more learning. And I've always known that more opportunities for learning comes when you apply it to dozens of bucks. Like you compare your skills and you learn a bunch of different situations within a season. It begets a little more success typically. Um, but when you have a deer that is that big and you don't think you'll ever get a chance at a deer like that again, it kind of forces you to forego all that learning and all that other stuff you really enjoy about it, to say, hey, this year might suck. Um, I might learn a lot less. I might be much more frustrated with people, but the potential for success and that feeling of success after this is so huge. Um, it could change the scope of my life and make this something that I can do permanently. And then I have all the time to chase all the deer I want. The more, the better way of thinking of that is this is the best way I could possibly challenge myself is to be after the deer that everyone else knows about and everyone else chasing. And what I was really thinking in my head is like, I got all this competition around me, like little egotistical of me to be like, I'm going to beat all of them. Like I'm going to be the guy to get it done, amongst all these people, the people that might know more than me, might know
The
less. Like
natural
I'm going to be the one to earn it,
the natural male mindset when you get thrown
Yeah.
in a situation and there's competition. I mean, most people are pretty
Right.
competitive, and it's no different.
She's moving.
Yeah. So, and I would say myself, I'm more of an opportunist, but now shifting, I think, not that I'm on any caliber of deer like you were last year. That's not the case because, like you said, I've seen the deer you were chasing last year that ended up getting killed. But I did have some opportunities at a couple of bucks that were bigger than anything I've ever hunted or had the opportunity to hunt. So I may be transitioning from that more opportunist to focusing on one or two deer or in one or two
Mhm.
specific areas, which I really haven't done up to this point. So maybe just for my personal satisfaction to maybe help me out, or there's a lot of listeners in that same boat, I feel like, because like we talked about, that's the natural progression of things. You get to a point where you just want more, you want to learn, and you can learn being an optimist too, but like when you're chasing that one deer, it just seems like you have to fine tune your system and just you have to be so perfect and go about it such a different way. I think it would be good for people to hear maybe the
Yeah.
difference between, a couple of things versus chasing one deer for the first time, maybe a couple things you picked up on versus the latter, like you've been used to hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very different because you have to be very, very, very calculated with your strikes. Like, it's not just like you're gonna go to another deer and restart and then go figure that one out if you bust him out, right? Like he's gonna make a move and you're gonna have to do a lot of work to figure out that move. So like you have to be pretty calculated with your strikes, I would say is a major difference. You're relatively gonna be hunting around the same area. Depending on where that deer is, if he's in smack dab in the middle of public, you're probably gonna have access to a lot of his range. But more often than not, like he's frequenting on private, public, whatever, you're worried about pushing him to other areas and you have 1 to 2 sits that is really going to be where you could kill him. And so it all depends on like what's the scenario in which you're chasing that deer. Now, if you just have all the land to work with in the world and he's in that area, you still have to be very calculated, but you have to like form a scenario where you can be certain to the highest degree possible. What that might look like is you might be postseason scouting and like, hey, I know he's relatively in this area. You're going to scour the living hell out of that area, and then you're going to scour wherever you think he's going to move to if he were to get busted out of that area by you or other people or whatever. And you're basically going to form your plan A, plan B, plan C, and all the sits you have surrounding those different areas where he could be. And then you would basically either you could sit back and wait for a picture of him or whatever. You can go in there and figure it out through sign and through hunts. You could go off historical knowledge on your timing and stuff like that. But generally, what I do is I form an area of confidence and then I hunt that area kind of by process of elimination. So I'll take like the borders surrounding my highest confidence spot. And whenever I think the timing is right for a given area, say I have like 5 points, like if you hold out your fist like this, and I think like right here, my ring right here is like where I'm going to kill him, right? But I know the timing is not quite going to be right. If he's in any of these, I have to access past there to go hunt this, and now I've screwed up a ton of different points, right? So I'm going to hunt the fringes kind of in a cross pattern, like you'd put on a tire, on you'd alternate the lug nuts. I'm
Yep.
kind of going to keep bouncing him back towards that center. Same thing as like when you're aiming, like in archery. I'm not if I'm aiming at my mouth here, right? Like, I'm not just going to hold there perfectly. That's how you kind of develop target panic and you smack the trigger and you piece off. But it's really like you're floating. And every time I waver, I come back to center and I waver and I come back to center, back to center, back to center. That's what I'm doing. I'm hitting them on one side, then the next, the next, the next. And I'm saving my highest confidence spot for the absolute perfect timing. And when I think I've stacked them in there, you get to that highest confidence spot, it doesn't work out. Guess what? He's probably not in that area anymore. He's probably making a big shift. And that's when you're going to the next area that you've scouted out.
And I think that brings up a lot of good points, but I think that's where a lot of people that aren't used to this style of, going after one deer kind of screw up. Everything's kind of changes as far as everybody might have that plan, like you're talking about. They have historical camera data for a couple of days for 2 years. This is the third year. They have it pretty narrowed down to this couple of days, but let's just say it's a very, very big deer. They'd be very happy to shoot it. They just get a little bit overexcited, a little rammy, and they hunt it a couple of days. They go to that spot even though the conditions are not right, and they kind of, like you talked about, they kind of blow it up. And then you could be the rest of the season, it could take one time and that pattern will never repeat itself like it had the last 2 years, just because of that, that one day.
Yeah. And some deer are more homebodies than others. I think like when you're chasing a specific deer, it's important you understand their personality. Like sometimes you're not operating on the average deer. I mean, almost always when you're on a special deer, you're not operating on averages anymore. That's what makes it like really hard for me, is like they don't behave as other bucks do because other bucks die and he has found a way not to. Like if he was doing something that made him vulnerable, me or the other people in this area would have already killed him. I mean, this buck behind me right here, he was acting in a vulnerable manner. He got habitual on the same area and he visited the same bed within the same week, which is super, super rare. And it made him really susceptible. And I was able to predict where he was going to shift, and I shot him like 300, 350 yards off of that bed. So I shot him coming out of a different bed, but I predicted where he was going to shift after he last used that bed that I was getting him on twice a week for 2 weeks. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if they become predictable, they usually die. And this guy died right away the second he became predictable for me. Big bucks are typically, I don't really find big bucks that are like homebodies. There are some that stay in general areas that they're very hard to kill. But most of the deer on here that are used to knowing what humans are and that humans are danger and they habitually kill things, they, in my experience, have just gotten the hell out, after they've been busted. Especially if you consider the same bed. They might return to a similar area, maybe 200-yard shift or whatever at the closest.
Yep.
But often it's like a quick quarter mile or a quick half mile the next day or the next morning even, if they've faced like some stark intrusion from a human. But again, that doesn't mean that there aren't deer like that. Like I might have just not faced that scenario yet with a homebody deer that will come right back and has his little core area and he's there all year round. I haven't experienced that yet. But it's really important that you kind of give up your preconceived notions of what deer do. You can use that to your advantage to recognize how it's worked in past scenarios, but really take the deer at face value and learn from him and learn what he's telling you. And I've got myself hung up to worrying much more about what other people are doing and not blowing up their hunts even when they were chasing them. I was a victim of many different scenarios last year that made it much harder for me to kill this deer. And I worried so much about what other people were doing and the other pressure that they were imposing upon him that I spent less time hunting him myself, which is, that can be foolish.
Yeah, and I think I kind of ran into that same thing last year too. It's kind of hard coming, a lot of people come from private and it's becoming more popular to hunt public. And, on private, you're used to having your stands, you're not having to deal with other people essentially at all. And then you go to public and it's just an uncomfortable feeling. I know I don't like to hunt in the same area, or give myself a little bit of a buffer between people if I can. Obviously things happen, but I'm just that way. I just like being out there alone. I'd almost rather be out there and not see a deer, but as long as I don't see another person, sometimes there's those days too where you just need to get away, and I'm just that kind of person. But um, yeah, it's and then the day that I ended up having an encounter with this big deer last year, I was 50 yards away from one person that was hunting on the ground with a crossbow. I literally could see him, and we are also about 300 yards from the truck. Um, so anything can happen. I mean, it's to try to pigeonhole every scenario. There's a lot of on the fly decisions that need to be made almost in every situation. I would say a majority of the deer or the nice deer that I've killed have been well, this might not work today. I had this preconceived notion what was going to happen. I make a little shift, and kind of like you were talking about, you made a couple 100 yard shift and, made it happen. It's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times it's just, you're just off by that little bit. So I think that can trip people up too, is if something goes wrong, not completely throwing all your cards away and, like giving up, saying, oh, that it's over, I'm going to go find a new deer. Like you were talking about a little bit too. He maybe only moved a little ways. He's comfortable there, and he was probably going to be back at some point. And if you're the
Yeah.
first person to bump him out of that area, chances are he will be back sooner than he would be otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe get into what this year's looking like for you and how maybe it's going to be either similar or different than kind of the way you hunted last year.
Yeah, this year's going to be very different. I'm going to Kansas this year. I'm going to be going the last week in October. So that's going to be a very new experience for me. I've never hunted Kansas. Going to be hunting solo. I've never gone on a trip alone. I've hunted completely alone on pretty much every trip I've been on except for Ohio. I hunted a little bit with Jake Bush, but um, yeah, been completely alone on all of my Nebraska trips and other stuff too. So it's going to be kind of similar to that. I'm going to be going in pretty early rut for Kansas, but that's just to kind of avoid people a little bit. Honestly, I'd love to go there outside of the rut too, but this year's going to be different. I'm going to be hunting a lot of properties that I have no experience with. Some that I have 1 to 2 years experience with. I'm very used to hunting stuff that I have absolutely no experience with. I've done that for the last 6 years. Been mostly hunting properties that I've never hunted before. And I am typically successful. So, I mean, that's not a bragging point. That's just saying I'm not really worried about it. So it's going to be different that I don't have particular deer I want to chase. There's one buck in mind that is, he's not like a 180. He's not a booner or anything like that either. He's not a giant, but he's a beautiful, beautiful mainframe 8 that I would love to chase just for fun because I think I could kill him and would love to kill him in the early season this year. But I have a few areas that I do think there are really big deer in just based on spring scouting. And I'll be interested to see what's actually in those areas this year. But yeah, I mean, going to be a little more opportunistic, willing to kill what gets me excited. Still want to, push the pace on what my best deer is and try to improve
Mhm.
upon that. But I'm not going to handicap myself so much. And I'm going to spend a lot of time this year hunting with my fiance. Hopefully, I'm hopefully going to be able to kill a deer with her, whether that's me or her shooting one. I'm not sure quite yet. I probably will try to shoot a doe with her. That it's going to be a big mission of mine this year. It was a small mission last year, um, but I don't know if she'll be ready to shoot one come the season. We're working on it. She's
Yep.
accurate at 30, but we got to increase her strength a little bit, increase her confidence a little bit. Just make sure she's ready to go with that before we start to make the decision of, putting a life in her hands.
Yep.
But very, very excited for that. And yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of weddings going on this year. So, I'm sure you can probably relate to that too a bit, Jake, at this
Yep.
age.
And I have two more during season two after mine, so it's
Yeah,
going to be a busy fall for sure.
I have 3 this season as well. So I'm not really not looking forward to losing those weekends because they're far and few. But I know just like normal, 95% of my hunting is going to be done in an hour or so after work. And I'm just going to find a way to get it done, and
Right.
go back to enjoying it for more pure reasons than wanting to kill one specific giant deer. And I say
Yeah.
that to you, and now I'm gonna find some giant deer and spend my whole season chasing him,
Yep.
just like always.
But yeah, it seems like it's just gonna be a refreshing year for you. It just,
Oh yeah,
just going back to that, taking it as it comes, just relying on your instincts, going in
hmm
with really no expectations. And honestly, that's when that happens and you have those years or parts of years after you fill a tag or whatnot. I know the years that I've filled tags semi early, um, and just having a doe tag in your pocket and just going out there and being in the woods with no pressure. That's some of the funnest times to be out there. You learn so much more just because you have such an open mind. It's not
yeah,
clouded by any expectations or anything like that. But why don't you
absolutely.
dive a little bit deeper into you were talking about earlier when you're on one specific deer, how your approach when you have them pretty figured out, or you at least think you do, and you're doing that stage hunting approach, maybe throughout observation, working on the outskirts towards where you think he's at or where he'll be, and then working closer in. Um, how does that change when you have a year like this year where brand new properties, there's not one deer, you're trying to find a deer? Is it a lot of just scouting until you find the sign that you know a mature deer is making and try to hone down that one specific set of sign? Or how does that change or your process change?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of the spring scouting. I found where a lot of mature bucks were last year, so I'll be honing in on that in particular. I'll be setting out cameras, SDs, a couple cells, just to try to gain information on what deer in this new area, what class of deer I can expect to be there. And I'll be operating first on my first attacks based on my initial guesses of when that sign was made from last year. So I'm going to be operating on how old did the rub look? Was there mildew in it? What kind of tree was it? What does that tree look like as it ages when it's wounded by a rub? I'll be looking at the incentives in terms of local food sources, the aggression of the sign, proximity to doe bedding, proximity to access. All those things will help me determine what time of year that initial strike is going to be. And that initial strike, I might be checking a camera in that area when I take it. I might be seeing sign on the way in. I might be purposefully putting myself, typically I do this, put myself in position to see whether that deer's in there before I execute a sit there. So I might be crossing, a trail or a scrape or a rub where I expect to see tracks or fresh sign or something like that. And if it's not there, or if it's not of a deer of the class I'd like to chase, I might still operate on that sit. I might still take it if I don't have another choice to move to. But typically, I'd back off or go to another spot, maybe on the same property or different property if I can, and not waste that area, not put intrusion in the area and hope it gets better. And I'll take that opportunity, maybe if I pulled a card, to look at that card and figure out, like what kind of size class in that area. Do I think it's on the upswing or downswing? Um, and then relate it back to the sign and kind of just make sure I'm hunting my way in every time, looking at where did sign pop up last year and how can I put myself in position to be downwind of that deer, checking that sign, and then deciding whether this is the spot to execute on a sit or maybe bumping to another and doing the same.
Just being ultra aggressive, but in a different way because you have that intel before on that one deer to where now you might have you know how to map scout. You kind of can have an idea in your head where you think you need to be, not have an X on the map necessarily that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to. It's more, you know, you're hunting, but you're scouting until you find what you want to find. You're being aggressive and you're not kind of tiptoeing around, but you're ready to strike if during that scout you find what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's like scouting your way in, but using spring scouting and preseason scouting and e-scouting to develop a route that makes sense. A route that so you're not just walking through the woods and wandering on a trail, like you're specifically choosing a route that will give you information about whether that deer is there right now or not, you know? And if the sign's dried up from last year, chances are it's not the deer that was there last year, and if that sign from last year was big and impressive and there's nothing now, then it might not be worth it. And it might be, like there's most of the biggest deer I've ever chased really don't make much sign. You know, the biggest deer I've ever
Mhm.
chased, I should say, the biggest deer I've killed made plenty of sign. But I think it's important not to completely rule out the area. So if I go and I'm going after work and I've got an hour to make it work, I spend 15 minutes on my access of that whole hour, um, like trying to figure out whether that sit is appropriate or not. And I'm wandering down the trail. I get to the area that was a scrape and a rub last year, and there's nothing. It's dried up. I'm going to be a little discouraged, but I don't. I can't move to another tree in 45 minutes, so I'm going to do that sit. But I know there's still a good chance there's a deer in there, just based on the area I've chosen preliminarily as one that would be good to hunt. So just because there's not rip roaring sign doesn't mean there's not a deer in there. But again, we go by average case. If you're being more opportunistic and hunting, the average mature buck, there's likely going to be sign if there's a buck in there right now.
Right. You say a lot of the places that you've had encounters, I've seen the exact same thing. I totally agree with you. The areas and the places that I've hunted or seen deer from a distance and had encounters with on the hoof, a lot of those areas don't you would walk right past them scouting through, or it doesn't make any sense sometimes, or there's no sign. But like you said, having the approach, you're hunting that sign or that previous sign in these new areas, and it might be a lesser buck or a less mature deer making that sign, but there's only really one way to find that out, you know. And then it's almost like you're crossing that off your list. You're going on to the next one, and then that's just adding to your intel. Then,
Mm-hmm.
you know a bigger deer. You've seen the sign that these bigger deer makes. You know he's in here somewhere, um, and then you're just confirming. It's not him, and then you can cross half that area out, and then eventually get yourself in the game.
Yeah, a big thing is just not being afraid to screw it up too. Because like
Yep.
if you get close but not close enough, and you never see that deer or hear that deer, but you still don't know if he was there sometimes. He could have just exited another way, or he could have, winded you and walked off or whatever. But if you don't have confirmation that that deer's there from some method, you don't really know if you were right or wrong necessarily. You have a good feeling you were wrong, but you could have been right. There's a chance that he just, for whatever reason, it didn't come together that day. If you go in there and you're tactical and careful and you push it slowly 10 yards too close and that deer flies out of there at 30 yards, that that deer was there. That you guessed right. And now you can go walk in his bed, figure out exactly what he was doing and apply it to maybe another area with that deer or the next year with that deer or a similar situation with another deer later on. Like you're so much more free when you're chasing other, like plenty of different deer.
Right.
Unfortunately, I'm in an area where there are a lot of good bucks to chase. Like I want to kill a mature buck, right? But my main judgment's going to be body and antler size. And, if I see a deer with a small body and a 170-inch rack, I'm still shooting and I don't give a shit if it's a 3-year-old,
Yep.
like, so, um, you know, I'd like to shoot big bucks and I cannot lie.
Absolutely. And I think that is going to be, my approach this year. And from people that I've talked to, and you're kind of just confirming that as well. Um, Not being afraid to bump a deer. I think I've gotten in that habit of tiptoeing so much just because, like you said, just being over analytical about things. But there's no reason to because, like I said, I've never been on that one deer to where I would need to be necessarily. I'm just trying to find a caliber or a pocket of deer that I would want to hunt. So looking back on it, it's almost you feel foolish, being so taking everything so slow. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I process things. It just may take me a couple times. And I'm just slow by nature, I guess. So
Right.
maybe that's just what I need to do. But I think if I had to boil down things or reasons why things haven't worked out, maybe I think that just being too slow and overanalyzing things is definitely could be an explanation. And I think this year that's kind of my goal is to be a little bit more not
Sounds like you want to be
observant,
methodical, like you,
methodical, not too methodical.
right.
It's
Like you want to be able
it's
to adapt to change in the moment, but you
right.
want to be calculated.
Yep. just let the instincts kick in when you know when the hair on the back of your neck stands up.
Yeah.
And I've had it happen multiple times. I think the last 2 or 3 deer I've killed, it's been just, like you've been talking about, scouting through an area, your spidey senses kind of kick off, and you're like, well, it seems good, it looks good, but then taking that second to maybe analyze it a little bit, but not too much,
Hmm.
and not, sit and waste time and just make that little bit of a shift and just go with your gut. If I was a deer, I would do this. And I think if more people would do that and just try to think like a deer, even though sometimes they do things that you can't explain, I think you'd be kind of surprised on how much success you would have.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So, your style of hunting is different than a lot of people, and it could be the same as a lot of people. I'm kind of like a gear junkie per se, and I'm always trying out new things. Um, I'm not someone who sticks with something for very long, even if I love it. I just like trying new things. So let's go over your kind of system as far as gear goes, maybe this year, and has it changed from last year? Or what have you used or ran as far as, tree stands, your mobile setup in the past versus what this year looks like?
Yeah, so I long ago used to run a old Lone Wolf climber, like one of their original climbers. I've run a Summit Viper. I've also run Lone Wolf old OG 3-step uh, climbing sticks with old Lone Wolf Assault hang on when they're big steel cast stands. And then I ran a beast stand and sticks. I still run a beast stand and sticks. Last year I hybrided, so I used a Timber Ninja Nano saddle, and then transitioned to a Latitude Maverick saddle. And yeah, I've never put any fancy straps on my. Well, I use an Osteo backpack, I should say, but I never put any fancy straps on my stand. But I'm gonna put some straps from Latitude, some backpack straps on there this year and try that out. I'm going to work with a different system of mounting that Osteo bag to the stand, maybe some different ways of mounting the sticks. I don't think I have the money for a new platform right now, but I'd really like to try out a saddle platform at some point. I think in a lot of the area I'm hunting, it's tamaracks, and it's really hard to hunt branchy trees with a saddle because you're like
Mm-hmm.
facing those branches and you're drawing into those branches a lot of the times when you're facing the tree. So it's kind of tough. I like to be in a tree stand for those setups, like a hang on itself. But hybriding just gives me both options, which is really nice. And I can still shoot, towards a tree in a well branched tree. But, um, it's just good to have both those options. It's a little bit safer in a saddle than it would be a harness, too. So,
I think a lot of
I
guys
mean,
are going to that hybrid style too.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
just
I
because
just love having the option.
once you, and like you were saying, you want to try a saddle platform, I've, I mean, I'm a bigger person. I'm, you know, just under 6 foot, probably 210, 215, depending on the time of year. But uh, I just never, I was always a tree stand guy, kind of like you growing
Yeah.
up, climbers, then to hang-ons, whatever. And then I tried a saddle. I've used the saddle for probably the last 3.5 years. Um, I dabbled with them like before I really used it a full season, kind of mid-season, through a couple hunts that I was like, oh, this isn't too bad. And then have strictly saddle hunted for 3 years. And I just never could get used to that saddle platform. I mean, some of those companies make like these really, really big ones that you can pretty much do a dance on,
Hmm.
360. And it's just like at that point, it's as big as a hang on stand. So I'd
Yeah.
almost rather do the hybrid style just because I'm not
Feel more
afraid to
comfy.
carry the extra 2 pounds and be way more comfortable, way more comfortable.
I'm the same way. Like I want what gives me the most comfortability and options, and I can still keep a quiet profile with is a big thing too, creeping through cattails and whatnot. But um if I have all those pieces of the puzzle where I can get into almost every tree, hunt out of almost every tree effectively, and be quiet on my access and unpack and pack up, um then I don't really care about the weight. For me, it's like
Yeah,
those are the added efficiency to my hunt. And if I start to care about the weight, I should probably be in better shape, until
that's a good point.
later on. And I've tried lighter gear. It is so nice. It's really nice to haul around a B stand and sticks versus a Summit Viper, but like I'm willing to, at this point, at this young age I'm at, I can take some abuse to my body, and do it repeatedly. I'd rather take that abuse with a more effective setup than be a little more comfortable in a less effective setup.
Right. And how do you think that your system, like last year, with that intel, hunting one buck, your system was a lot of, situations that I feel like a tree stand maybe would have been good, if you're doing some longer sits or areas where you
Mm-hmm.
knew you needed to be. Like now this year, kind of being on the fly, trying to, you know, burn the boot leather in a sense. Like, do you see yourself changing any part of your system, or you're still going to go hybrid with the tree
I
stand?
still, yeah, I still really like the hybrid. I just let the deer tell me how I need to sit it. Like last year, I sat on the ground several times. I sat one stick high, two sticks high on a stick in a saddle. I sat in plenty of places that was too thick to get a hang on in there. I sat on no sticks. I just everything you could imagine. But I don't let my gear limit me. I just let it like I let the deer tell me how it's going to get killed and how I need to set up based on branch height, thickness of cover, this deer's tendencies, thermals, all these different factors. And there's no way that I won't set up for a deer if need be. So I plan on keeping that same strategy of just adapting to the situation, adapting the deer, and what my knowledge of the specific setup is. But I can tell you right now, there's gonna be plenty of times that I sit hybrid in the tree stand and I never once relax in the saddle. And there's gonna be plenty of times where I sit hybrid and I'm always in the saddle. And there's gonna be plenty of times where I'm on the ground and it's neither. And there's gonna be plenty of times that I'm just sitting on sticks, I'm standing on sticks in a saddle, a stick or two high, and there'll be times when I steal sticks from my friends to go 8 sticks high and crazy way up there for observation or,
Yep.
an interesting tree setup and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's really no way that I won't hunt this year, I guess.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too are always looking for that perfect system. They're always doing this stuff, and they're like, "Oh, I think I finally found my perfect system," and then they never really stray from that, and then it ends up costing them, or they're not in the right spot, like you're kind of talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Just not allowing the gear to handicap you, but almost find a lot of people hunt different ways too. So it's almost finding the gear that is going to fit your personality in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like this year, I still have gear. I can get up in a tree if I need to, but I'm committed based on what happened last year and the scenarios that I was in and in the terrain that I'm hunting in. As I'm starting the year all on the ground. Like I'm committing to it's not a very popular way to hunt, especially in the hills or in the timber, but
Mm-hmm.
I've done it my entire life on and off. So I kind of have that little bit of knowledge on how to get it done. I've killed multiple deer off the ground in the timber, but I'm afraid that there's going to be scenarios where you don't have that equipment and you get in there and you're like, man, I wish I was up in a tree. But I think this year I'm willing to kind of negate that, and if it kind of hurts me one or two times, it hurts me. But just being able to dial that ground game in this year, like last year, if I was on the ground, I probably could have had a couple of different deer versus
Mm-hmm.
in the saddle. Just everybody says practice in the saddle and you can shoot 360 and all this stuff. And it's just like when a lot of the days I never even got up in a tree and I was just walking and scouting and I'm not even worth the hunt, didn't find anything I really wanted to set up on. And then it gets to, the rut and you find a banging spot. You set up and you're like, man, I haven't been in the saddle in 4 days. It's like you're always rusty, it seemed like. And I'm like,
Right.
I just wanna I'm gonna bring like a little tree seat maybe and whatnot. Um, and then
Yeah.
trying out that new Osseo pattern should be killer
Oh, dude,
on
the
the
Wrap
ground.
X is gonna be pretty clutch for that. I got
And
spotted pretty bad last year when I was moving. Like, I was in a tamarack swamp, and I was sitting in tamaracks, and they're just fairly open in the particular area I sat, and I was like between the trees, so I didn't have a backdrop, and I just learned that like, yeah, like the pattern looks like a tree when I'm still, but when I'm like drawing and looking for the deer, and I'm not, I don't have a backdrop to blend against. It's just moss, green moss behind me.
yeah,
Like it's pretty stupid setup for me. Like I set up really poorly. And so I'm looking forward to using that Wrap X that'll actually blend in with that a little bit better and
I
break up
think
my
it's
outline better.
way more versatile than I
Hmm.
honestly had scenarios where I got the most out of the Raptor pattern. I had scenarios where I thought it blended in pretty well when it on the ground in some scenarios where it's not what it's designed for. So
Right.
I
Sitting
can't
like
really
turkey
complain
hunting,
too
it's
much, but
great.
yep,
Yeah, like sitting on a tree, which is I mean, it is what it's designed for. It's designed for blending in with a backdrop of a tree, and it is fantastic for that, you know. And I mean, I've stalked bucks in Nebraska in the plains with it, you know, and knee high grass I've got within 25 yards from over a mile away. And so, I mean, it works for that too, but it was specifically designed after a great horned owl, aka to blend in with trees, and it works really, 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 really well at that.
yeah,
Well, I'm excited to try the ground version of that
yeah,
camo,
absolutely,
which is just gonna, I don't know. I think it's gonna change things a lot for you and I, guys that really do want to hunt the
yeah,
ground.
yep. And just putting a bow on, that the ground hunting thing this year, it's just willing to struggle a little bit, but just go all in on something for 1 year and to just dial it in.
Yeah.
Because I've done it before, had success doing it, but like there's so many times when, oh, this little thing, didn't go right because I just don't do it all the time. And I'm just
Hmm.
committing to one thing and doing it all year and to just get really, really good at it and to fine tune all the parts of it before I try to go do something else. And I
And
just think my impatient personality, like talking about making our gear fit our personality, if I don't like a spot I'm in, I'm the type of person that like, and I'm going to sit there for 30 minutes and then I'm moving. So it just fits my personality and my style, I think, to just be on the ground. And we'll see how it goes this year. Honestly, I might love it.
yeah,
I might hate it. I don't know, but that's the plan.
I think it'll be really good for you. And I think that even if you don't succeed this year, you'll have learned a lot of scenarios where it doesn't work, and you'll be able to apply it in the perfect timing across the board in the following years, you know, and you'll have the confidence to make it work when you need to. So I think that's like I think it's a big investment, you know, it's a big
Yep.
investment in your future as a hunter. And I think it's a very good one.
I've heard from people that it just shows a lot of your weaknesses and like when you're getting up in a tree and stuff. There's scenarios where I won't argue that that's the what you want to be doing, and if you want to have success in a certain area. Um, but I don't know where I was going with that. But total my brain fart. But
That's all right.
it's all right.
Nothing's burning besides I'm really excited to go to Belize this next 2 weeks from now. I'm
Is
going
that what
August 2nd. Yeah.
your
Yeah.
honeymoon?
Me and Caitlin are doing that for the honeymoon, but I get to go tarpon fishing. She's letting me loose tarpon fishing. So we're gonna do a full day of tarpon, permit, and bonefish fishing, and try to get a grand slam. By the way, really cool shirt you have on. I
Yeah,
thought it was that
absolutely.
shirt, but now I got to
Yeah,
see the
yes, it
logo.
was
There we go.
the wild
Sick, man.
calling.
There we go.
Yep. But yeah, it's kind of nice when you can incorporate a little bit of what you love to do,
Oh yeah.
in a vacation or especially your honeymoon like that.
Yeah, we are not the kind of couple that could ever sit on a beach and drink for even an entire day, you know, maybe an entire day, but most certainly not for 2 days or a week, you know. So like
Yeah.
we can't just sit there and rot. Like we got to do something. And so we're going to get our we're being pretty ambitious. We're going to snorkel a ton, we're going to get our scuba certification while we're out there. We're going to do probably like 6 dives, which is a ton. And then we're going to do a full day of flats fishing, with spin and fly gear. It's just gonna be so cool. Like we're gonna squeeze every little bit of that kind of lifestyle we can out. And I mean, it's kind of like you see that echoed in everywhere else, with like the way that I
Yeah.
try to edit my videos and the try to equipment I use, and then the way I practice things and the way I get anal retentive about details and the way I hunt. It's always all in, burn the candle at all three ends.
Mhm.
It's kind of how I do it.
That's a once in a lifetime, place to go or vacation, and you got to get the most out of
100%.
that for sure.
Oh, dude, for
But
sure. Absolutely.
it's getting to be crunch time as far as um, hunting season's right around the corner. It seems like
Yeah.
every year.
I've got a ton of cameras I got to put out yet, too. I'm so disappointed. But the wedding, I wasn't going to get poison sumac for the wedding this year.
Yeah, that would not have been good. But yeah, I'm on the same boat. I have some cameras I need to put out. If not, I'll probably just throw them in my pack and put them out, hunt my way in a couple spots I know I want to put cameras and go about it that way. I'm not in too
That was
much of a
really
rush. I
useful
got
last year.
pretty busy month coming up, so I don't know if I'll get out. But
You have
if I
no
can,
idea, man.
if I can get my gear dialed in, my bow and all that, my system dialed in at the very least, I don't have to be out in the woods this time of year anyway. It's like 95 degrees, or it was today, so it's been like
Yeah.
that quite a bit.
Heat stroke isn't a lot of fun. Got it twice last year. Puking in the. When you have to share a pin with someone and share your location and give up a hunting spot just because they're the only people that would know how to get you out of there, and you're almost certain that they're going to need to, it's usually not a great scenario.
Yeah, when you go in somewhere and you may not, you might not make it out.
Right. Right.
It's a gamble,
Yep.
but
Don't worry. I was just chasing a spike back here. I wasn't really going after anything big,
yeah.
but come get me and drag me out.
Yeah. I don't really have much more on the docket to talk to you about.
Yeah,
I
man.
know we are all over the place, but I haven't talked to you in a while. I just wanted you to, to come on and share some stuff. What's new with you? Just getting married and kind of what your season's going to be looking like. We talked a little bit of tactics in there too, but I'm not too worried about that kind of stuff. Just wanted to
Yeah.
catch up with you. It was good talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited to see what happens with your season this year. You're always welcome to come out by me, or we can meet in some neutral ground. And that's another fun thing. Like it was fun to go back to the old college stomping grounds for a couple
Yep.
sits last year. Brought Caitlin out there, saw some deer, passed quite a few, and it was just like it's just really fun to get lost and into something new. And I'm looking forward to doing that with her. You and I will do that sometime very soon. I'm sure we will this season.
Yep.
And then, it'd be cool to just bounce around to other states, start new traditions and stuff.
Yep. Make deer camps great again. I will keep
Yes.
saying that, but people need to start having more deer camps because you're missing out.
Yeah, the good old Bo Martonic line. he's
Yep.
he's doing a lot of really, really good stuff for the sport, though, or for the community, I should say, with the way that he brings people into hunting from all reaches of life. It's really great.
Yep. So everybody that's listening still to this point after all of our rambling, Jake Sklenar, why don't you tell people where they can follow your season this year, your YouTube, and anything you got going on?
Yeah. Well, you can go to the Wild Calling on YouTube. That's where you're going to see most of my stuff. Wild Calling Outdoors on Instagram is where we're going to be posting all the info about when a video pops up or what I'm doing this season. On the Wild Calling on Facebook, I'll be posting plenty of stuff on there. It's going to be almost a replica of Instagram, though. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You'll see my updates there, all my previous hunts, and appreciate all your support. Jake, I really appreciate you having me on, by the way. It's always fun to talk to you, and it's always fun to be able to tell some people about some crazy adventures that we have.
Absolutely. Everybody go check that stuff out. It'll be linked in the description of this podcast. And I appreciate everybody listening.